Let's go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Pruch. I am with the Leadership Foundation. I have the pleasure of ensuring we keep our alumni from the Leadership Network engaged and connected no matter what's going on in our community. And this has been a fun way to really try to find unique ways to engage us virtually. So Virtual Voices is a series we developed in response to COVID to keep our alumni engaged and informed as we work through this challenging time together. We have been asking alums who are on the front lines of impacted industries to share their knowledge, their perspectives, and their leadership lessons. And today we are very lucky to have Kelly Brough with us to share her perspective. Before I introduce her, I do want to just quickly give a few thoughts on how we will run this meeting. We have Megan Vivier, who will be managing this call technically. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much. She's a whiz, and if you have any issues, please do message her privately in the chat function. We are recording this session, and you can find it on our foundation website afterwards within 48 hours. We will put everyone on mute just to minimize background noise, but if I call on you for a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Just be sure to mute it again when you're done speaking. We also have the control to do that if needed. We are going to be using the chat function for all questions, so be sure to open up that chat function. You can find it down at the bottom of your bar by the 3 dots. We also recommend you put it on speaker view instead of gallery view. It's up in the upper right-hand corner. You can see that just so you see exactly who's speaking. We want to see Kelly's face this entire time, of course. We look forward to chatting with all of you. So let me start, please, with introducing Kelly. She probably needs no introduction for most of you, but Kelly is the president and CEO of the Chamber. She's a mother, a mentor, a friend, a total badass, an avid golfer, an adventurer, and a lover of cycling. So here's my test for all of you. Open up your chat box. One of those things I just said is not true about Kelly.
I probably gave it away.
You probably did. Let's see if folks are watching. So I challenge you to put it in your chat function if you know what she is not. It looks like many of you know her already. We will see.
Yeah.
So Kelly has had a career of being a first woman to do a lot of things. She was the first woman to plow snow at Denver's original airport. And she's our first president and CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, who of course we know passion is to ensure, wow, everybody knows you, Kelly. This is impressive. Good job, guys. I see some folks in here that, Lori, we knew you knew. But really, Kelly's passion is to make sure Coloradans are put to work in really good jobs, and she represents 3,000 businesses, 400,000 employees. So what an honor it is to have Kelly here with us to really be able to share how she's leading through these challenging times. We have her right where we want her, guys. So let's get ready to ask questions and really engage her in some conversation. And I'm going to start us off, but please feel free to put your questions in the chat function, and I'll call on you when it's your turn to ask your question aloud. So let's start with this. Kelly, I know you have seen a lot in your day. I'm sure nothing compares to COVID, but have you seen anything similar to this, and what's been different, and how are you kind of realizing the differences between other big crises and issues?
First, that's a terrible question because it's
Nothing
like, Kelly, you're so old that I know. Did you live through the Spanish flu? I was not here for the Spanish flu in 1918. So, you know, in 2009, I took this job and everybody said, wow, what a bad idea, because you know, it couldn't be much worse, and you're going exactly where, you know, the greatest challenges are. It's in our business community. And yet what I'd say to everyone is this is so vastly different. You know, there are specific industries that are particularly impacted in 2009 because the financial foundation of what happened there, you know, you really saw across industry devastation. This is very specific jobs, very different than what we've gone through before. It's a reminder to me about why those primary jobs with really good benefits and flexibility and can make all the difference for an employee. And the jobs where we've seen huge impact are the jobs that are in retail, accommodation and food service, entertainment. Those 3 industries have been hugely impacted, and not just size of company, not just small, but small business certainly has been tremendously impacted. But when you look at those industries, those are often, you know, jobs that are a little lower pay. Maybe earlier in our career, we're taking That's the hope. Maybe a few less benefits because you're hoping to advance your skills to be in a job that has better benefits and better pay in your career. And I think it's eye-opening. I also think it's worthy of note in the United States who has those jobs. And I think this shouldn't escape any of us, that people of color and women are overrepresented in those jobs. And I think we have to take very seriously a commitment that says we use this moment as an opportunity to help people start their own companies. By the way, in 2009, that was a key strategy that made us more successful. As you filed for unemployment, we often could capture you and say, wait a second, why don't you consider starting a business? We had tremendous success. I think that opportunity presents here again. And to upskill workers, to take people from one industry and see, can we move them into another industry with a little bit of skill development? And so we're working in earnest on that. But the truth is, some of it is all very similar, right? Like the things I've just described to you, they're not new, but this is a powerful reminder that when something goes wrong, it can disproportionately impact some groups more than others and some jobs more than others. And COVID is definitely worth paying attention to where the impacts are.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of companies that have to deal with folks that are in the field, folks that are in the office, and having to really balance the idea of optimism and hope, but also the reality of what's happening. How are you seeing that not only at the chamber, but also in the businesses that you're representing through the chamber? I mean, how are folks managing optimism versus reality?
Yeah, you know, the economy is really a complex thing. And so while we've had record filings of unemployment claims way larger than what we were seeing in 2009 and way faster, we have industries that, you know, are hiring during this time. Our financial services, our professional service industries. I want you to think of like accounting firms and law firms, you know, that they can work remotely pretty effectively and pretty easily. And so we've seen rockets launched during this time. Like construction continues to be an essential industry that continues to work. I think what you're reminded of in those industries that continue to work and are essential is employers have taken a lot of action to protect their employees and employees working with them to try to make it safer. But there's industry that's still moving forward, and this is a good thing. While it may be hard to hear if you lost your job or are struggling, the good thing is the more where there's activity, the better, because it keeps our economy afloat a little longer and can help buy us the time we need to get the virus under control as we bring others back online to work. I think probably most importantly, you know, we're at a transition right now. The governor has said we're going from a stay-at-home order to a it's good to be home, or it's good to, I forget what it is. You know, you get the idea.
Safer at home.
What is it?
Safer at home.
Safer at home, yes, indeed. You know, the reality for employers is that's not a huge difference. Yes, there is permission in there for employers who couldn't have anybody in their offices before to now have people in their offices. But employees are nervous. And what you're reminded of, we have a ton of employees who have some risk. You know, an example for me is I don't fall in the category of old enough yet to be high risk, but I can see it from here. But I do have parents and I'm the primary caregiver for my mom and dad. And so I have to be really careful where I go and what I do. I think that is true for a lot of people, that they either themselves or have someone in their lives who's, you know, are compromised potentially in terms of their health, and the risk to them is much greater. We have parents who have young children with nowhere to send them. I think we've all become way more tolerant of kids screaming in the background and distracting us. But the truth is, as employers, we have to think about that. And how do we make sure we're accommodating those parents as best as we can? And then, of course, for those that may be going back into work or small numbers, I think it's thinking about things like, am I cleaning everything? How do I up the cleaning requirements? Increasing access to hand sanitizer. And Megan was telling me earlier about a really funny social media where it's a plane dumping Lysol on all of us, but employers are thinking about those things, requirements for masks, testing of temperatures to come in the door. Frankly, these are things that the Chamber will be doing with our team because we care deeply that we keep them as safe as possible. And I think that's all part of the thinking right now, Elizabeth.
Well, and we appreciate that, of course, as staff. It's going to be interesting in this reentry. And I know you guys are hosting, the Chamber's hosting a call about that later today, which I'm looking forward to. You know, I'm wondering, you're a product of your experiences, and I know being the first female CEO of the Chamber, do you think at a time like this, you have an advantage as a woman leader? And I ask because we've heard from one of our speakers from an earlier virtual voice is how he has realized he is not as empathetic or emotional or sensitive, and he's really had to turn that on for himself during this because he knows that a lot of his staff is handling this in different ways. So do you see this as a difference for you two being a woman? Is it helping?
Yeah, well, if I was empathetic and emotional, I suppose it would. Just joking. I think, you know, I think I have a style of leadership. I don't know, you know, I don't think it has to do solely with gender, but I think this may be more common in women. And that is, I tend to lean on a team. And I don't mean just my team in the office, but I have, for example, an executive committee at the Chamber, and I convene them to say, hey, listen, here's my thinking, here's my plan, does it make sense? And that would be my general style, is to really rely on others, especially when you're in something you've never managed before. And frankly, I don't care who you are, you have probably not managed a pandemic. That is a very small group. And so the reality is you really do need more people helping you think about it. And it's not even just the actions you take, it's how you talk about the actions you take, how you message it, right? Because you can either scare the shit out of everybody, or you can really think about how, you know, what is the real line we're walking, because we are uncertain. And then I guess the last thing I'd say is I think leadership right now really requires people to say, I don't know, I'm uncertain. I don't know the right answer, but I'm willing to work with you to explore it and to bring people together who can help me discover it. And frankly, that means I'm going to get it wrong too. But if I have people helping me think about it, we can course correct quickly. I will say, I think this is a moment where you have to recognize we have very little control. And if this is news for people on the call, I'm really sorry to be the one to break it to you. If you had children, this is where you discover this reality, that you really control nothing. And I think what something like this does for leadership is reminds you we don't control a lot, and acknowledging that and then figuring out what you can control and how you can be helpful is key right now. And I think if your style is one that's easier for you to do, it's probably easier to manage in this moment. If that's a hard thing for you to do, it's probably really hard to navigate this moment.
I think you're right. Just recognizing that you need to look at those different ways of leading is important, and that we're all different. We all have it in us, but finding those ways is important. We have a question from KJ who privately let me know her audio isn't working well, but I'd love to ask this on her behalf. What are your thoughts, Kelly, on how this pandemic will change Coloradans for the better? And how can we use this as an opportunity to reset in a good way?
I love this question. You know, my girls will tell you that everything when they were kids, I would always be like, and here's the lesson here. And apparently that never goes away, even when your children are adults. And so I quickly look for, you know, the lesson. And I do think there's some really positive things. I think people are going to wash their hands more. I think we're reminded the speed at which we can spread germs and impact others. And I think we've probably taken for granted in our lives that everything is clean and safe. And I just think we're going to have better personal habits that probably will pay off not just with coronavirus, but generally in terms of illness and sickness. I think our awareness of our choices and how they impact people around us, not just people we love, but even people we don't know. I think this is a good thing for all of us to be reminded that we do impact others in our daily life. You know, from how we choose to drive to if we show up without a mask to saying please and thank you and showing gratitude. I do think this slows us down and makes us reflect on we're not alone in this world, and frankly, we like other people most of the time. And we even have really discovered we like way more people than just our families. I'm not saying we don't all love our families, but many of us are ready to expand our world back to that larger kind of network of support. The last thing I'll say, Elizabeth, to this question is, I think we have become fairly divided as a country. You know, if you can draw a line on it, we have figured out how to draw the line. And you've really seen it in public policy on partisan issues, but you've seen it on employer and employee, urban and rural, and you've seen a lot of lines be drawn in our country. And I think this is a great equalizer, right? That you're reminded what's good for an employer is typically good for the employee and vice versa. And this notion that, you know, this has to be adversarial in nature, I think that is a powerful thing for us to reflect on and figure out how we could continue to recognize that working together and solving things together and thinking about our impact on others is really the great lesson of this moment.
I agree with that. Elise, I'm going to come right back to the question. Kelly, I have a follow-up on that. How have you been able to, I mean, you have to do this a lot in your work, regardless of a COVID pandemic or not, but how are you bringing together different perspectives during a time like this? We have small businesses that are really wanting to open. We have the healthcare industry that's wanting to slow down and wait to see what happens. How are you, in all the connections that you have and work you're doing, bringing those folks together and finding that middle ground?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think some problems you can't negotiate, right? Like, I probably don't look at this as one where you say, hey, listen, you'd like to wait 90 days, you'd like 30, let's go with 60. Does that work for everybody? You know, this is really one where I think consistently, at least for me, my answer has been, let's look at those public health officials and what they tell us. Frankly, on this moment of safe at home, if we screw this up, this will be really devastating for our economy. The last thing we want is to increase the spread of the virus that requires us to go back to even more serious kind of shutdown of our work lives. And so I would say, I think what we're about to do will be the test of each of our ability to really be thoughtful and really be smart and really be careful, or I think things will be significantly worse. So, you know, how I look at it is, it's not just the industry saying, oh my gosh, we have to open or I'm going to lose my company. You know, what we focus on there is, how can we help you last as long as you need to last, because we don't control that, right? The spread of the virus. How can I help you last long enough? And so for our small businesses, for example, we did a webinar in that even before the Paycheck Protection Program was approved, telling 940 members how to get in line to get that money as quickly as they could. And remember, these were employers. So these are nonprofits, they're for-profits, they're sole proprietors. I just think, again, going back to, you're not going to, if the virus continues to spread and we're not slowing it down, nobody's going to open that business back up. So can I help you last long enough? Has been more my strategy. The other thing embedded in that question is this kind of healthcare notion that healthcare providers are like, you know, go slow. Listen, public health definitely is making sure we understand the implication of getting this wrong. But for our industry who works in healthcare, this is, by the way, the largest employment base in the state of Colorado is health and wellness in Colorado. They're in serious trouble. Their revenues are significantly down, and yet they have to, hospitals in particular, keep that capacity so they can service all of us if we do get the virus and need their support. And yet doctor's office, dentist's office, all of the other services that are provided through that hospital or other providers are shut down. This is an industry that is really challenged through this moment. And I think we forget that, right? Because they're so centered to responding to the pandemic, but financially very challenged to navigate it.
I think that's insightful. It's a tough one. There's no right answer, like you said. Elisa, I'd love to have you unmute and ask your question. I, of course, appreciate your comment here that all of Kelly's team is doing an amazing job. But please, Elisa, the question is first.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to reach out and, ask and talk about how your staff is doing such an amazing job of keeping us positive, keeping us informed, keeping us connected. Gosh, they're so creative. What are you doing to keep them motivated to continue to do that? I mean, we're already several weeks in, we're probably going to be another month in. And how are you just continually keeping them motivated? It's just very impressive. And I'm love to know your secret sauce. Yeah.
I mean, I just said I'm going to fire all of you if you didn't. No, I'm totally joking. I'm totally joking. A couple of things happened, right? Our team is built to meet in person. That's what we do. We bring huge groups together. We deliver great content. And overnight, the answer was, you now need to figure out how to do this online. And what was interesting is it wasn't just that we had to figure out how to do it remotely, but we have an entire events team who creates physical experiences for you, who literally in 24 hours figured out how to deliver these great webinars with great content. And I think two things happened. One, I don't think it's all about me at all. I think these are a team of people who understood not only our members needed them more than they have ever needed them in their lives. And they were panicking. And what our team did, I think, was exactly what you hope a really rock star team does. And that was put their head down and said, how do we get them what they need in the time frame they need it? And we will just do it. The other thing, that happened very quickly is, as I said, there are certain industries that have had huge layoffs. And I think for our team, there was a bit of a panic of, are we gonna lose jobs? And it didn't occur to me until one of the managers said, hey, I have a teammate really scared. And so what I did is told my entire senior team, you tell your team, I have no intention of laying anybody off. I need them. And I need them to do something different. I need them to learn to do something different. And I need them to do it very quickly, but I need them. And we're not creating a plan to lay anybody off. I really, really want everyone to work. And I also think that was motivating, right? There was a fear there and I could remove the fear. And if I said I did anything smart, it would be for anybody who was scared, I removed the fear for them. But the truth is our team is motivated by, we put Coloradans to work through our members, and our team understood this was the moment we were going to either help more people keep their job or we weren't, and really delivered to help more people keep their jobs.
I can vouch for her on that one, Elisa. It has been really fun watching what the team has done. And as a team member, I mean, I'm seeing everybody on the chamber staff really taking on additional roles, learning new things, helping where they can fit in. And it's felt good to be a part of the chamber right now. So thank you, Kelly, for your leadership.
And it's made us so much better, right? This team has way better answers than I would have if I alone was calling all the shots.
Yeah, it's fun to see everybody come together. Kenneth, I love your question. Why don't you go ahead and unmute and let's hear your question, please. And good to see you on the call.
Good to see you too, Elizabeth, and good to see you, Kelly. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
And everybody, really. So I think this COVID crisis has kind of refocused our, kind of inequities in our social and economic systems. And I know that we had already been doing work on that through Prosper Colorado, and have any insights from that Prosper Colorado work, become relevant as we look at how we come out of this, and any insights that will improve our approach to our recovery or make that more resilient?
Yeah, you're so thoughtful, Kenneth. Thanks for asking that. So Prosper Colorado is an initiative, for those who don't know, that we started probably 2 years ago, if we're really honest about it. 1 year of really intentionally using a very diverse steering committee to look at who wasn't benefiting as much from the economic success we've had in Colorado and what could we do. That committee came out with 3 kind of areas of priority focus as our initial areas of focus. And I see Lorena's on the call, so she can correct everything I screw up here. Lorena Zimmer leads Prosper for us. But the 3 areas were, one was jobs. And what this committee did, and it is probably one of the best glimpses on a single page of what our job market looks like in Colorado, but in essence defined kind of 4 categories of jobs: those who were unemployed, those who had less than $40,000 a year earning in their job, those roughly 40 to 65, and then 65 and above. And I don't have the numbers exactly, but the intention is to kind of focus on those jobs that are median and above are good jobs. They typically have really high, great benefits with them. The jobs in the middle category are jobs that where you're starting to move into those really wonderful opportunities that you can raise a family on. And those lower end jobs can be a perfect job depending on your time in your life, but if you're 45 and have a couple kids, that's probably a challenging job for you. And the reason I mention all of this, Kenneth, is, as you know, really understanding the percentages, the demographics in each of those categories, and then developing strategies of how do you move people. And what the pandemic has done is really highlighted those $40,000 and less jobs are where we've had our greatest impact. And those are folks who are probably much more on the margin. And much more diverse than the rest of our workforce. And so if anything, it says double down on that effort and let's start moving those folks up that kind of job pipeline and creating more jobs as we can. I think how we look at it is, you know, there's on that pipeline of jobs, you will always have people along that whole pipeline, but it's really, is it the right place at the right time kind of question. And I think we're very prepared to adjust the model based on what's just happened and adjust our strategies based on what's just happened. A second area of focus outside of kind of the jobs itself was housing, and really recognizing that we're a very expensive housing market, both rent and for sale, and developing a number of strategies. And we've already been working with consultants on really looking at what are the strategies for our market that will move the dial the fastest and begin implementing those. And then the third area was entrepreneurship. And this one may be even more relevant now after the pandemic experience. But this was, our examination was, we found women and people of color weren't as speedy to start up those companies. And so it was really a desire to say, let's do that. I think what you're going to see us say is across the board, we need to restart companies like never before again. This, I think, will be similar to what we did in 2009. But I think you'll see us double down on our entrepreneurship strategy. So Prosper is more alive than ever before, and frankly, timely, because we have a model and a structure that can guide our strategies, and measure. We can measure our outcomes to see if we're making headway.
Thanks,
and
Kelly.
Lorena is responsible for all of it.
That's right.
A community-led effort. We appreciate that. It's going to be important, as you said, to move that forward. Brent, wonderful question. You're taking it global. Please feel free to unmute. Good to see you.
I'm going to match the map I have here. Considering the Great Lex trip to Munich, Germany has seems to have a different way of looking at unemployment, where businesses and industries retain workers, often at a shared sacrifice, reduced pay, but maintain benefits, and then put them to work in retooling plants, maybe doing work in the community or other critical markets they have. Do you see this model being more favorably adopted in the US or Colorado? And if you have any examples, that would be great.
Yeah, Brent, you know, to some degree, I suppose it has, because we have basically said you can get 2.5 months pay from your federal government to keep your employees on payroll at a time when we're not going to allow you to work. And so to some degree, we've moved into that space.
Right.
A little bit. We definitely see employers on the news this morning. I heard from a man who runs a bar. There's not much he can do for his employees. He clearly has had to lay them off and shut the bar down. And what he's doing, though, is personally delivering food to build emergency reserve funds that can be used directly by his employees. So I do think you're going to see employers and employees making tougher and tougher choices together, particularly those really small businesses who have been so impacted during this time of how can we keep more people here and keep us going. But this is a tough moment. It's often easier to make these kinds of decisions, when times are good. I think what, unfortunately, in our nonprofit community in particular, don't forget their employers. I really think they're struggling with, how much of my reserves do I use? Will I have to use them all? Do I begin layoffs before I fully use them? I think there are real challenges. And my experience has been employers and employees make these decisions in small organizations much more jointly than we often recognize.
That's good. Thank you for that insight. I really agree. And with nonprofits, it's the employee base, and then there's the mission continuing to stare at you that gets larger. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Brent. And please remember, feel free to add your questions into the chat box. Kelly, I've got another one for you as folks are thinking of their questions for you. Automation in IT will likely be a huge business trend, as we've seen already, but it could really transform how we're doing business together. Do you have any thoughts around this and seeing what could come out of it?
Yes, it would be great if it was just a robot here sitting talking to you instead.
No, it wouldn't.
And I was off, riding my bike. I think what you're going to see is the pandemic has really advanced what we have all been kind of slow to adopt, right? Can I work from home, Kelly? Oh yeah, sure. Schedule it with your managers. And what we've come to discover is we can be pretty productive. And we did it overnight, right? We flipped switches and told everybody, figure out how to get plugged and connected and make it work. So I think you're going to see much more adoption of things we might have been kind of slow to do that are productive and healthy and good. And telemedicine in particular, I think, is where you're going to see huge, speedy advancements coming out of necessity. In this moment, they've been out of necessity. I think they're going to be out of convenience. I think this curbside pickup and drop off, and I think there's a few customers who are going to say, hey, don't stop that. I'm kind of digging it. I like Home Depot bringing the mulch to my house instead of me driving in to pick it up. And so I think you're going to see some of those things stick, which means there'll just be an increased demand for that kind of tech set of skills. And this is certainly an area, again, through our Opportunity Youth and Prosper work around talent and making sure we're preparing people, certainly making sure people understand these are credentials that can be earned in a shorter period of time than a 4-year degree. Often you could, in 90 days, 6 months, get some pretty powerful credentials that could transition you from an entire industry to a whole new industry of work, and that is the tech arena. So there's no question, I think we're just going to go a little faster and maybe a little further.
That's the hope. I think there's got to be silver lining coming out of this. You talked earlier about authenticity and leadership and the importance of that. Do you have any highlights or great stories of authentic leadership you've seen through all of this from yourself or other leaders that you've been working with? Because it's been nonstop for you.
Yeah. No.
Well, okay, moving on.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think what I have really liked the most is in the olden days, like a month ago, you would have an idea and you'd kind of share it with your team and run it around a little, and everybody share, because you were in a proximity where you could easily do that. What I really admire the most are the people who say, I have an idea, I'm sure it's a bad one, but it's clumsy, right? Because you have to draft an email and it looks a little more concrete and thought out. And what I really admire is somebody who says, I don't really know where to go with this, but here's my idea. And then the team still builds on it and shapes it and directs it. And I just think that takes a lot of courage. I see authenticity not as speaking your mind and telling everybody what you think. I see it really as a courageous act where you're trying to be truthful and honest and find solutions and give feedback in a manner that people can hear. And I think when you're virtual and electronic, I think it is much harder to figure out how to do that. So my deep respect. We have had so little drama with our members, with our team, people really assuming the best, helping everybody find the right solution, taking pushback when it comes. I've been super impressed by that, because my experience before this was you often had to take people off of email to say, oh my God, stop this electronic conversation, it's too destructive. And I just haven't seen that. And I think that's because people are being very thoughtful and recognizing that this is the only way to communicate right now. And so we have to give each other a little room and be very thoughtful about how we say and what we say. That would be the thing I respect the most.
I think it's a good example of our Colorado civic DNA, right? I mean, we look at leadership, collaboration, shared vision, inclusivity, all of these things are able to play out virtually as well. And it's been quite a treat to see it happen. What's one of the skills, Kelly, that you've had to work on the most during this time, personally?
Yeah, well, I'm an extrovert, in case you guys didn't know this about me. I'm not a golfer, but I am an extrovert. And I get my energy from being with people. I get my energy from being with people, exploring ideas. If for the teammates on, they're all like, yeah, she has a lot of ideas. Yes, most are bad. But I even get energy from that, right? From the team laughing at my stupid ideas and then helping evolve them into something actually smart. I find it very hard to get energy from a remote situation. And while I do have family here with me, I really find that very hard. This has to be like an introvert's dream come true. I saw a really funny meme, and it was an introvert saying, I've trained for this my whole life. I have not trained for my whole life, and I find it very hard. I miss you all.
We miss you, Kelly. It is tough for us extroverts. I think Andrew Schmidt told us the other day on one, saying, be sure to check in on all your extroverted friends because we are not okay. It's not the same. I think I spent a day very safely sitting on my front porch with my neighbors on their front porches, a good 20, 30 feet away, having a happy hour just so I could see another human being.
Yeah, I totally get it.
I'm with you. Kelly, I want to go back to the business side of things when we look at the chamber as a whole. And again, I'm hoping that we hear more questions from the audience. Don't be afraid. Kelly is always happy to answer any question you might have for her. But tell us, Kelly, you mentioned earlier that the team has really stepped up right now to give your members what they need. What are they needing right now? What are you hearing the most?
Yeah, well, what we definitely heard the most was, I want to keep my employees on payroll and keep my organization viable, and I need help. And so I would say, our first 2 weeks were thousands and thousands of our members telling them where they could access aid and support and resources, and telling their employees where they could access aid and support and resources. We kind of had two goals going into this, and I think this really helped clarify for us our priorities. Our first goal was, let's keep those employers viable and keep their employees on payroll. And our second goal was, for any employee who loses a job, let's make sure their family does okay through this time, so that when we get back to work, they can all more easily rejoin. And to me, the simplicity of that, the clarity of there are two people we are serving, and they will never be at the expense of each other, really helped us. But I will also say, I think emotionally it's been hard. I don't know if our team feels this way, but for me, you know, hearing from our members who couldn't keep their companies viable, who had to lay off their workers, how hard this is, how scary it is. You know, I think you can't help but absorb that in your own heart, and try to figure out if you can do something more to assist them and their employees, because it is very scary.
It is scary. It's a real issue. On this call are alumni of the Leadership Foundation, right? And we're being proactive in trying to help motivate our alumni civically and do all that we can to engage in the community, be impactful. What do you see us needing to do for the community and for businesses in this coming year, 2 years, to really make an impact and help move this forward and help everybody re-enter into society in the way we need to?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, this one isn't rocket science for me. It's frankly what you all do every single day, just naturally. It's probably even why you signed up to be in a leadership program with the foundation, is because you're constantly thinking about, you know, how can I impact the world outside of my world? And how can I make it better and work for more people? And I think that's exactly what we have to do. I guess for me, what I think about is, you know, if I spend my day with everybody who's lost their job and whose company is not holding on well, it's a really hard day. If I spend my day with companies who are still hiring and growing and people who are finding access and support, it's a really good day. And both of those are the truth. And so what I'm reminded of is that collectively, we have way more power than what we all realize. Our ability to help people reconnect to new opportunities, to think differently about how they do business, to find new customers, it's all there. It's a question of, can we devote the time and resources to the people who need it at the speed at which they need it? And you know, I don't know if you ever saw, there's this movie called Stand and Deliver, and the actor in it, at one point, he's the main character, and this is a great movie about an inner city group of kids who were sort of treated as, you know, not a lot of hopeful future. And this teacher came in and said, I'm going to change their lives. And at one point, he's doing everything. He's having heart attacks, he's struggling. And at one point, somebody says, I don't know what else we do. And he says, I can do more. And it really struck me when I saw that, you know, like 30 years ago, of that is always true for every single one of us. I can do more. And what I would say to all of us is, think about what more you can do, and let's do it, because we got to do it right now. And the speed at which we do it and the effectiveness with which we do it will change everything, not just for the people you help, but for our entire economy. And that is the only answer I know going forward.
I couldn't agree more. I think that it's the idea of go above and beyond, go beyond what you typically do. And I think we can do that. I loved Karen's message here too. And I do encourage others to put in the chat box what you're doing and what we should be doing. Donating blood to Children's Hospital. I know Kelly's already done that. I've done that myself.
I did plasma.
Yes, even more important. So I have another appointment at the end of this month to go. Would love to see what everybody else is doing. Kenneth is clearly going to go golfing with Kelly. I like that.
Yeah,
Kelly,
Kitty,
what's the... Oh, go ahead.
I saw Kitty said play more golf. Wear your mask, Kitty. Don't share your cart. You know, I have lots of advice for you on that.
you have advice on putt-putt, Kelly. Let's be real. Yeah. Kelly, what's something you want all of us to know? What haven't you been asked here today that you want us to all consider and think about through this entire process, through leadership, through just your daily activities and how you're coping personally?
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'd say is probably most of the people who are on this call are in the category of you're doing okay. That your families are probably healthy, or maybe got through if you did contract the virus, that financially you're okay. You maybe either have savings or your job continues to pay you. is my guess for most on this call. And I would just say that is not the experience of many in our community. And probably most of your friends are in a similar experience to you. And I think for all of us to recognize, you know, when I took the job at the chamber, yes, 10.5 years ago, I took the job because I said, I personally believe nothing is more important to a family than a parent having a good job. That for the parent, it builds esteem and confidence. For the family, it improves the educational outcomes and health outcomes for the kids. It starts to allow families to build wealth and future. And I still believe it. I believe it more than ever. And lots of people have lost theirs in our state. And my challenge to all of us would be is, let's see if we can find a few of them and get them back in the ball game. They want to be, but they probably need support and help to find their path back. And so even if your own world isn't as directly experiencing that impact, I would encourage you to make sure you're not missing sight of how many people are.
I appreciate that message. And it really goes back to encouraging everybody to do more than we can. I really want to thank you, Kelly, for spending time with us. I know you've done these endlessly for months now. Your insight, your leadership is amazing, and we really appreciate that. I would love to ask all of our guests on the call right now, if you would, in the chat function there, just type in a one-word takeaway for me. What's some takeaways you got from this call today? We would love to hear it. Go ahead and type in a one-word. Oh, it looks like as you're doing that, Kenneth Ho, yes, great work that they're doing there at UC Health and helping to donate meals. Thank you for sharing that. But again, want to thank you, Kelly, for this. I love seeing these words that we're seeing coming in. Resilience, engage, hope, opportunity. Kelly, you're creating these thoughts for everybody, so I thank you for that. We are going to close out. I want to just remind everybody that this video has been recorded. You will see it on our Leadership Foundation webpage. You can check the network and our website for more information on future virtual voices. We do have one coming up next week on April 30th, focused on education. We've got an amazing group of folks from the education industry that are going to be chiming in. So Kelly, thank you again. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.